this problem, we're going to allocate service department costs using the direct method and then allocate costs to jobs. Carlo Manufacturing has two production departments, the machining and assembly department, and two service departments, maintenance and cafeteria. The direct costs for each department and the proportion of service costs used by the various departments for the month of August are given below. The direct cost for the maintenance department is $48,400, $36,000 for the cafeteria, $103,000 for machining, $72,400 for assembly. The proportions of the maintenance cost is allocated 20% to the cafeteria, 60% to machining, and 20% to assembly. The $36,000 cost in the cafeteria is allocated 60% to the cafeteria, 20% to machining, and 20% to assembly. We need to be careful in this problem. In this problem, since we are using the direct method, we will only use the proportions that are being allocated to the end user departments, the 0.6, the 0.2, the 0.2, and the 0.2. Let's go ahead and begin our problem. We begin by picking up our cost allocations, $48,400 in direct cost for maintenance, $36,000 for the cafeteria. And this problem is only concerned about indirect costs, not direct costs, so we'll leave the direct cost for the machining and the assembly department blank, giving us a total cost allocated of $80,400. The proportion of our cost that we're allocating in machining was given at 0.6. The proportion of cost to assembly is 0.2 for a total of 0.8. The allocation percentages then are 75%, which is the 0.6 divided by the 0.8. So 75% of our maintenance costs will go to the machining department, and the remaining 25%, or 0.2 over 0.8, will be allocated to assembly. The cafeteria costs, 0.2 to machining and 0.2 to assembly, which means 50% of the cafeteria cost will be allocated to the end user department machining, and 50% will be allocated to the assembly end user department. Let's go ahead with our cost allocations. We have $48,400 in direct costs coming from maintenance. That's being allocated. 75%, or $36,300, will go to the machining department. The other 25% of the $48,400, or $12,100, will be allocated to the assembly department. We again sum the row to zero to ensure we've allocated out all of the cost, and we sum the column to zero also to make sure we've zeroed out the cost of maintenance. The $36,000 in the cafeteria will be allocated out to both the machining department and the assembly department in equal proportions. 50% will go to the cafeteria and 50% will be allocated to the assembly department. Again, we sum the row to ensure we've allocated our costs correctly, and we sum the column to zero to make sure we've zeroed out or allocated out all of our cost. So the total cost being allocated to the machining department is $54,300 and $30,100 for the assembly department. And again, we check to make sure that the cost after our allocation should equal the total indirect cost that we were given. In the second part of our problem, we're asked to allocate the cost in the machining department and the assembly department to jobs CM22 and CM23. The first thing we need to do is we need to calculate predetermined overhead rates. We're told to assume that both the machining and assembly work on the two jobs during the month of August are allocated to the basis of machine hours for the machining department and labor hours for the cost in the assembly department. The number of labor hours and machine hours worked in each department are given below. For job CM22, we had 290 machine hours in the machining department and 20 direct labor hours. Job CM22 had 40 hours of machining and assembly and 30 direct labor hours in assembly. We're given the information for job CM23, which was 30 machine hours and 40 direct labor hours in the machining department and 50 hours of machining and assembly and 370 hours of direct labor and assembly. So notice job 22 required quite a bit of machine hour time, and it required quite a bit of direct labor hour time, job C23, in the assembly department. Let's go ahead and calculate our predetermined overhead rates. Our predetermined overhead rate for the machining department is $169.69 per hour. We take the total cost in the machining department of $54,300 and divide it by the total machine hours worked in the machining department. That's the 290 plus the 30. We will use that predetermined overhead rate to allocate costs from the machining department to both jobs. Next, we calculate our predetermined overhead rate in our assembly department. We take the total cost in the assembly department, which was $30,100, divided by the total number of direct labor hours worked in the assembly department. And that was the 30 direct labor hours worked on job CM22 and the 70 hours worked on job CM23. So we take 30,100 divided by 400, and we get a predetermined overhead rate of $75.25. We'll use that rate to allocate costs to each job for time spent in the assembly department. To allocate our cost, we need to take our predetermined overhead rate and multiply it by the activity rate. The job 22 spent 290 hours in the machining department. 169 times the 290 gives us an allocated cost of $49,209. For time it spent in the assembly department, it had 30 hours in assembly. We multiply that by the predetermined overhead rate, and we get a total cost allocation of $2,258. The total cost allocated to job CM22 is $51,467. For job CM23, we pick up the activity level. It had 30 hours of machine time in the machining department. We multiply that by the predetermined overhead rate, and we get $5,091 allocated to job CM23. In the assembly department, it spent 370 hours of direct labor time, multiplied by our predetermined overhead rate of $75.25 gives us $27,843 in cost, for a total cost of job CM23 of $32,933.